Keisha Lance Bottoms has decided that she is not going to seek a second term as mayor of Atlanta. And you know what? I fully support that. My name, of course, is Matt Stevens, and this is your Matt Minute in Politics. And here's some of my thoughts behind that really quick for you, right? So have you ever been in an unwinnable situation? I think that that's what Mayor Bottoms is in herself. Now, when I say unwinnable, I do not mean voting electorally. She clearly won the mayor's race in 2017, and she has led Atlanta, I think, pretty well since that time, okay? When I say unwinnable, I mean there's a lot of other forces going on. And if you know, like I know, if you're set up anything like me, you know that unwinnable situations over a long period of time don't add up. I don't like them. And I have just felt like for a while, actually, that she has been in an unwinnable situation. And this decision not to run for mayor of Atlanta shows that. And she has decided to move on to greener pastures where she can make more money and just move on with her life, raise her children, have her family, etc. And I fully support it. I wish her all the best. Now, here's why I think that she arrived at that decision. I don't know her personally, never met her before. So I'm just guessing and doing YouTube like everybody else. But I'm gonna give you my thoughts anyway. First thing is the pandemic. Why the pandemic? Pandemic hit everybody. It hit every city. It hit every budget. People have been trying to get themselves back on track from the pandemic, and cities are no different in that respect. Budgets still have to be balanced with the city and the state, and she's been trying to do that. She has been, of course, the regular city stuff. You're trying to fill potholes. You're trying to keep, water clean. You're trying to keep streetlights on. That's the normal stuff. In her case, it was a little bit different because we had the pandemic on top of that. And in her case, she also, in her official capacity, got sued by the governor of Georgia. Why was she sued? Well, she was sued because she tried to lock down the city. She tried to tamp down the virus. She tried to issue mask mandates and social distancing requirements and occupational requirements for businesses in the city. She tried to shut down bars and clubs and lounges, places that people were congregating. Well, she couldn't do that because the governor sued her. She was able to still keep the mask mandate, but overall, her attempts at shutting down Atlanta during the heart of the pandemic did not work because she did not have buy-in from the state. Can you imagine being the mayor of the regional hub of the Southeast, the state capital of Georgia, and you can't even issue a mask mandate in one of the largest and most popular cities in the country? Not because you don't have the leadership skills, but because your governor is shitty. Imagine that. Unwinnable, which brings me to point number 2 of 3. The racial justice issues in Atlanta. If you remember, around the time that George Floyd was murdered in Minneapolis, there was also a shooting here, a killing here in Atlanta by the Atlanta Police Department of a man named Rayshard Brooks. It was at a local Wendy's right in the city, about 2 exits from the state capitol building. So definitely in a very populated area of town and an overwhelmingly black area of town. Police officers shot Rayshard Brooks in the parking lot of Wendy's. A few days later during protests, they actually burned the Wendy's down. Okay, so that put Atlanta on the national map. There was obviously the George Floyd protest going on at that time, and Mayor Bottoms rose to national prominence. If she wasn't already there, she rose even higher in national prominence during that time, right? So when I say unwinnable, this is the problem, okay? You had all this stuff going on with the George Floyd protest, then we had our own issue with the Rayshard Brooks protest and Breonna Taylor and all that. Add all that together, and a lot of people were there were calls for people to defund the police, okay? Feel how you feel about that. I'm not here to argue with you about whether you support it or don't, but there were calls for defunding the police, looking at APD practices, et cetera, et cetera. And she was asked to help de-escalate some of the tactics of the Atlanta Police Department. Okay? Unwinnable because it brings me to my third and final point. At the same time, while you had this issue with George Floyd, Rayshard Brooks, Breonna Taylor, you had these police-involved shootings and murders. You also had a steep increase in violent crime in Atlanta. That increase was by residents, both of the city and of the metro area, but a lot of it was from out-of-towners coming to Atlanta because if you go back to my first point, during the pandemic, Mayor Bottoms was unable to shut down the city of Atlanta properly from a CDC perspective because the governor decided that it was in Georgians' best interest to keep everything open. That way we could still make money during the pandemic. Okay. So you got this kind of like unwinnable situation. You got, on one hand, we need to defund the police. We need to de-escalate. We need to, all that. On the other hand, you have this steep increase in violent crime. I'm talking about everything from drag racing in the city to petty theft to actual violent crimes, murders. Just last weekend in Atlanta, I think the first weekend in May, we had like 22 shootings in Atlanta, one death, just craziness. So definitely outside of the usual norm for the city pre-pandemic. But all of that, I mean, there's smaller things too. I'm not going to go into all that because it would bore you, but I feel like this was an unwinnable situation for her. Again, I don't know Keisha Lance Bottoms. I wish her all the best for serving out the rest of her term, which she will do. Wish her all the best in that and in her new role. Supposedly she's going to Walgreens corporate. So that'd be a really good look for her and a much quieter, low profile look for her. But I wish her all the best in that. But I don't like unwinnable situations. I'm sure she doesn't either, if she is anything like myself or like many of you all. And I think she did really well. I think she was the mayor that Atlanta needed for that time. And it'd be really interesting to see who kind of gets in her position afterwards, obviously, now that we're coming out of the pandemic. But I just feel like, as a Black woman mayor, it was her first term, and you add the pandemic on it. It was probably for her like 2 terms in one, because it was just every day. It was just new bullshit every day. Between stuff went on with the residents, the police, the pandemic, the governor. It was like she was just catching it from every angle, not to mention she's a wife and a mother as well. So I just felt like I needed to get on camera and say that really quick. I don't like unwinnable situations. I'm sure many of you don't. And I just felt like this in my spirit just said, unwinnable, not going to do it anymore. So I'm not surprised. Also, not surprised because if you follow politics as close as I do, you remember that Joe Biden, Keisha Lance Bottoms' name had been talked about as being a potential cabinet member in Joe Biden's cabinet. And she said no. Thought that was really interesting. But I mean, hey, it's now all coming together and making sense. I wish her all the best. And I wish all of you all the best. All my social media information is in the lower left-hand corner as usual: Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and YouTube at Mr. Prune Juice. I appreciate you watching. Please share this video. Also, please comment on it if you know anything about Atlanta, Georgia. If you've been to this area, you know anything about Keisha Lance Bottoms, would love to talk to you about her. That's all I got for you today. Have a safe day, and just stay healthy, everybody. Talk to you soon.